I'm Rose. Here at Wounded Women Rising, we have honest conversations about healing after abuse and life's hardest situations. We talk honestly about confidence, identity, and creating a life that truly feels like your own again. Today, we're talking about guilt and shame. I know these words are heavy words, but we all experience guilt and shame, sometimes more than others. This is not going to be one of those conversations where we drag ourselves back through painful memories or sit in the darkness of the past. This conversation is really about possibility, because no matter how long someone has struggled, healing and change are still possible. So, before we talk about guilt and shame, I think we need to talk about safety first, and not about the physical safety. The kind of safety I want to talk about today is emotional safety. The kind of safety where your body is no longer tense all the time, where your mind is not constantly preparing for the next problem, the next criticism, or the next emotional hit. Safety is being able to sit quietly without feeling like something bad is about to happen. It's about being able to think clearly. It's no longer questioning every feeling, every thought, or every decision you make. It's becoming more aware of what you are feeling before reacting automatically. When you have spent years stressed, criticized, fearful, and living with unpredictability, your body becomes used to tension, so that any sense of calm feels very unfamiliar. But as emotional safety begins returning, many women begin noticing they're not as overwhelmed by life as they once were. They sleep a little better. They realize they're not panicking in the same way they did before. They notice that they can get through difficult conversations without reliving it for 3 days afterwards. And these are signs that your nervous system is beginning to understand that life is becoming safer. Human beings are remarkably adaptable when given safety, support, self-awareness, and time. And as emotional safety begins returning, confidence often begins growing alongside it. Many women believe confidence belongs to somebody else, to the women who are naturally stronger, more certain, more outgoing, and those that were emotionally untouched by life. That's not real confidence. Real confidence is not becoming fearless, nor is it pretending everything is fine. And it's not waking up one morning suddenly free from fear, sadness, doubt, or the difficult memories. Real confidence is much more human than that. Confidence begins growing when you start trusting your own decisions, when you no longer need someone else telling you what to think, what to feel, or what choice you should make. Confidence also changes the way you experience difficult emotions, such as fear, sadness, guilt, and uncertainty. When you're confident, those emotions no longer feel bigger than you are. Difficult days will still happen, but they no longer take you down the way they once did. And even when life feels uncertain, confidence helps you move through it with more clarity and trust in yourself. That kind of confidence changes a woman's life because confidence changes what you are capable of carrying. And this is where guilt and shame begin entering the conversation differently. Once a woman begins feeling safer emotionally and more confident within herself, she often begins seeing guilt and shame through a different lens, not as proof of who she is, but as emotions she had carried for a very long time. You see, guilt and shame are not the same thing. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, there is something wrong with me. Guilt can help us recognize when we have acted outside of our values. Guilt can become very heavy when a woman carries responsibility for things that were never fully hers to carry. Guilt settles into the body. Sometimes it sits in the stomach like a knot that never fully releases. Sometimes it rises into the throat every time a woman tries to speak honestly about what she needs, what she wants, or what she feels. Guilt can make her apologize for things that do not require an apology. It can make rest feel selfish, boundaries feel cruel, and happiness feel undeserved. And over time, unresolved guilt can also turn into resentment because a woman begins carrying the emotional weight of everyone else while abandoning herself in the process. Now, shame attacks our identity. Shame convinces a woman that she's flawed, weak, damaged, foolish, too emotional, too sensitive, too trusting, too much, and somehow not enough. And many women carry shame for things that were never truly theirs to carry in the first place. You see, as women, we can easily blame ourselves for staying, for trusting, for reacting emotionally, for not seeing the signs sooner, and for struggling afterwards, and for not getting over it quickly enough. Some women even carry shame for the ways they have survived. Over time, those thoughts can become so familiar, they stop sounding like thoughts. They start sounding like truth. That is one of the hardest parts about shame. It settles deep inside and skews the way you see yourself. And when a woman is still emotionally overwhelmed, still living in fear, or struggling to feel stable day to day, guilt and shame can feel enormous. But as emotional safety begins returning and confidence begins growing, something does start changing. A woman begins realizing she can look at those old beliefs without immediately collapsing because of them. She begins questioning things she automatically believed about herself. She realizes she was surviving the best she could with what she had at that time. She starts seeing how fear shaped many of her choices. And she understands that trauma affects the way a human being thinks, reacts, and copes. And slowly, she recognizes that struggling after painful experiences is part of being human, not proof that something is wrong with her. Guilt and shame stop feeling like identity. They become experiences, emotions, stories that she has carried. Guilt and shame are not the definition of who she is. That does not mean every difficult feeling disappears overnight. But it does mean that feelings no longer control the way she sees herself. And I really want every woman listening today to hear this next part clearly. Freedom from guilt and shame is possible for every woman. Those emotions may have shaped the way she sees herself, and they have influenced her choices, her relationships, and the way she moves through the world. But that is not where her story has to end. Healing is possible. Every woman can learn to see herself differently. She can stop measuring her worth through the lens of guilt and shame. She can experience peace, confidence, and emotional freedom. If today's conversation spoke to you and you're ready to begin living with more peace, more confidence, and more emotional freedom, I want to invite you to book a free Freedom to Be You session with me. This is a private one-on-one conversation where we talk honestly about what you've been carrying, where you may be feeling stuck, and what healing and confidence could begin looking like in your life. Because guilt and shame do not have to define the rest of your story. So wherever this conversation finds you today, I hope you remember this. Guilt and shame are not the truth of who you are. Healing is possible. Confidence can grow. Peace can return. And little by little, you can begin experiencing yourself differently. Not through the eyes of fear, guilt, or shame, but through the truth of who you are becoming. Take gentle care of yourself this week, and I'll see you next week.